Now, the Meiri says something interesting. The Meiri writes also that one has to honor the parents if the parents don't have money. And he adds one line here. Look at the last line in number 3. Afilu ata mesavev al psachim. Let's say you don't have money. Let's say parents have no money, and then now the children have no money either. So the Meiri says, it's based on the Yerushalmi, the children will have to go door to door now collecting money for their own parents. Now, if this was a halach in tzedakah, if I have money to support the guy, I pay. If I don't have money to support the money, I don't have to go door to door to help the guy out. I need to help myself out. So what does the Meiri mean? I need to go door to door collecting for my parents. Elamai, it's not a halach in tzedakah. It's halach in kibbutz v'eim. That's how important honoring parents are, that if I have money, if they don't have money, and I do, I must pay for it. If neither of us have money, then I have to go begging from door to door to support my own parents. That's how far kibbutz v'eim goes.
Does that mean in the list of who you give tzedakah for, they don't even put parents in it because it's taken care of by that mitzvah?
Well, right now, we're not. It's not a halach in tzedakah.
Right.
Right now, it's not a tzedakah at all. It's a halach in kibbutz v'eim. It doesn't even get to that point,
That's
like you said.
Saying.
Exactly.
I'm saying it's not even in the list.
Not even the list. It's above the list. Exactly.
I also don't think you get a tax deduction if you.
Well, that's by the next question, not tax deduction, but the next question becomes, which can I use my meiser ksafim?
Yeah.
Money is designated for tzedakah. Can I use that for my parents? If it's halach in kibbutz v'eim, a mitzvah in kibbutz v'eim, I can't use tzedakah to buy lulav. I can't use tzedakah to buy a sukkah, to buy tefillin. That's a mitzvah. But if it's a halach in tzedakah, as we'll see in the rush in just a second, then you can actually dip into your meiser ksafim funds for this.
Isn't going from person to person to try to collect money embarrassing for the individual?
Sure, definitely is, but
so is it really halacha that you should really have to do that?
For one's parents.
Like a busha, really.
Again, no one should ever have to go through this, obviously, but there are aniyim who do it for themselves. And
that's different.
But you're saying
to say my parents don't have money, can you please give me money?
I know we wouldn't wish it upon anyone. We'd rather them not have to do that. But if a person gets to that point where the parents and themselves have no money, there's no choice at that point. Who's going to support the elderly parents? So this child takes the obligation.
Somebody, the community.
Yeah. I'm saying we would rather them tell the rabbi and have to do it in a nice, more tsanua way and more respectful way with dignity. But he's just saying if that's not the case, it's not available, then the next step is that the child goes door to door to support his parents.
The next step or the first step, which is comes first?
Well, I'm saying if he has no money. I know this would probably be equivalent to going to the community, asking the rabbi for money. You know, that's much easier. Back then, they didn't have a system like we have probably also. They had a gabbai tzedakah and whatnot. I don't know how they asked for money, but I think this is the way of saying that the obligation falls on the child because the halacha of kibbutz v'eim dictates that. Now, the Rush takes a different approach. The Rush on the Sugya in Kedusha number 4, he says it's not a halacha in kibbutz v'eim. Rather, he writes, V'ha'av, reading just the bold lesle, if the father has no money, kaifinan le leben, we force the child, v'shaklinan minei, we take from the bank account of the child, b'torah tzedakah. Not because of halacha kibbutz v'eim, but halacha in tzedakah. V'yavinan lavua, we make the child give the father to halacha in tzedakah. And he goes on to bring a proof. If you remember the sugyas in Daf Yomi and Ksubas recently, there was a sugya whereby we forced a relative to pay tzedakah to another relative who was in need. You're allowed to enforce halachas of tzedakah. So there's a whole hierarchy. There's a priority list of who gets first. So, for example, there's locations. One's own city, Ircha, goes before a different city. There's oftentimes you find, not often, but you find sometimes a person will come collecting from Yerushalayim, and says, Yerushalayim comes before all cities, so you should pay me before you pay Aniyim and Woodmere. That's not really true. The lach is, your city comes before any other city. If your city is taken care of, then the next best city is Yerushalayim over some other city. But your city versus Yerushalayim is always, Ircha comes before Yerushalayim. Next is Yerushalayim and then some other city. There's also in terms of individuals, which individuals deserve first. And one's own family, if they need the support, comes first in terms of anim. I get this question every so often, that there's a individual whose children are learning on kola, they need some help and this and that. Can they use my ksafim to support them? And I answer, if they can't support themselves, then yeah, the tzedakah should go first to them. If they can't support themselves, there's no question about it. So the Rush says, this is a halach and tzedakah. If one's parents can't support themselves, the tzedakah halacha is that you pay them as opposed to paying someone down the block. And then he writes, but doesn't the Yerushalmi say that if the parents have no money and then the children have no money, the child should go door to door to collect? We don't find that halacha anywhere by tzedakah, that if the guy doesn't have money, I need to go collecting to help another ani out. Yeah. So if it's halacha in kibbutz v'eim, okay, fine, I need to go above and beyond to make sure I've got money to support my parents. But if it's halacha in tzedakah, we don't find that. So the Rush has a different reading of when it says the child needs to go door to door to collect. It's not because he's collecting money to support his parents. He's collecting money for himself. Why? Because we saw in the Gemara above that he has to miss work to honor his parents. And now he's missing work, he's missing money. So now he collects money for himself, not for his parents. Just look what the Rush writes at the end of number 4 there. Afilu hu mechazel psachim, he has to go door to door to collect money for his parents. That which it says he needs to collect door to door, not that he uses that money to pay for his parents, because he doesn't have to pay out of pocket for his parents. The father pays for it. He has to honor his father with his body, meaning he has to take him to the doctor, to the grocery store. He's going to miss time on the job, and when he misses his job, his hours, his salary, his pay, then mitoch kach tzarich lechazal psachim for himself, but not for the lach of tzedakah paying for his parents. So that's the first approach. Again, these two approaches, whether the halacha is a halacha in tzedakah, halacha in kibbutz v'eim. Now we have a Tosos, a number 5, who seems to have a steer. The Tosos in number 5, and there in that Sugi in Kedushin, at first says it's halacha in tzedakah, and then he says it's halacha in kibbutz v'eim. Look what he writes in number 5. He paskins on the very top, reading just the bold again, Kiman de Amar Mishal Av, that the father has to pay out of pocket, the children don't have to pay for the costs. Mashma shekach halacha, that's halacha the father pays for. But then he writes one line down, De'im ein la'av mamon, if the father doesn't have money, va'ben yeshu, but the children do, tzarech haben lefarnes mishalo. The son must pay out of pocket. De'lo yehei ela acher, the father is no different than some other ani who needs support. K'da'amar benara shenispatza, it's a parak in Ksubis. The Rav achpe lahu gaver, Rav forced a particular individual, v'apik minei arba me'ezuzah litzdaka, and made him pay money for tzedakah to a relative. So there's a concept of paying tzedakah to a relative. So the Tosa says a son supports his father if he needs midin tzedakah. He could use ma'aser ksafim. But then at the very end, the Tosos quotes that other opinion of the Ritva. Look what he writes that Yerushalmi, the last 2 lines of number 5. Od Rayam Yerushalmi, that the son pays for the kibbutz v'eim, shevesi lamala kabed Hashem mehoncha. You honor Hashem with money. Im yesh lo money, if you have mamon chayiv. Im lav, if you don't have money, you're pater. Ubi kibbutz v'eim, nemar kabed esevecha v'esimecha, dimashu bein yesh hon, bein ein lahon. So this last opinion here, this Yerushalmi, it's the equation between honoring Hashem and honoring your parents, which is telling the halacha that you honor your parents is halacha in kibbutz v'eim, not halacha in tzedakah. So again, in the beginning he says it's a din in tzedakah. At the end he says it's a din in kibbutz v'eim. What is the mechai? What's the driving force for the children's obligation to support his parent? And this is a question that the Maharsha asks. So what's the answer? The answer is the Bir Chashmuel. Now Bir Chashmuel, it's a good kibbutz v'eim topic. I just gave you the answer. I'm about to ask you a question. The Bir Chashmuel was written by who? Anyone know? Baruch Ber. Why was it called Bir Chashmuel? It should be called Birchas Baruch. Or something Birchas. Why? Who is Shmuel? His father. He named it after his father. We're going to see. Maybe next week we might do some sugas about how to honor parents after they passed away, after they've been nifter, Kodesh, and other memories of that sort. So there's an Indian brought down that naming a sefer after a parent. So the node of Yehuda, his name wasn't Yehuda, but he called Yehuda based on his father. So Bir Chashmuel was called Shmuel based on his father. Such an Indian. So anyways, the Bir Chashmuel says the following. Bir Chashmuel says, I'll say this outside, and then we'll read it inside. The obligation of a son to support a father, that's a halacha in tzedakah. When it comes to normal tzedakah...
By the way, is it son over daughter?
Son over daughter. I don't think there's a distinction. I haven't seen any, but I don't think there's a distinction. I don't think. I could be wrong. Now, it has to be if the daughter has her own money. If she doesn't have the money and the husband owns it, that's another topic, who has rights to the money. Nowadays, we paskin anyways that women have more rights to the credit card than the husband, even though the husband might make more money, but the women have more rights. That's serious. It's brought down in the poskim. I kid you not. Either way, the Sabir Chashmo says as follows: the halach of a child supporting a father is halach in tzedakah. You get a check mark for tzedakah, meaning you're allowed to use ma'aseh ksafim for that. But the effort that it needs to be put in and exerted, that's kibrav v'eim. So in other words, if I want to support an ani down the block, there's only so much I need to do to support him. When it comes to honoring one's parent, I need to do a lot more. The effort, it goes much further. So the kiyum mitzvah is a kiyum of tzedakah, but the tirch involved, the amelus involved, that's kibrav v'eim, makes the threshold much greater what I need to do to satisfy this mitzvah. So look what the Bir Chashmo, read this inside, number 8. L'chaora ef shalomar, perhaps we could answer the steer and tosos, d'chayven de mechuyev hulalitain mamon l'aviv mishum tzedakah. The reason why I'm supporting my father is because it's halach and tzedakah. Once that's been established, it's a din in tzedakah, mimela, shuv havi mechuyevu, the obligation, al hatoreach, the tircha, the effort, midaraisa mishum kibud. So kibbud v'ava'im is what makes the tircha even greater. I need to put much more effort than I would normally. And that's what the Bir Chashma, how he explains the Shita and Tosos. Now let's look how the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah Paskin, Halach L'maisa, that I share with you the last few minutes, an interesting tshuva from Rabbi Kiva Eger. Look at number 9, the Shulchan Aruch and Hilchos Kibbud v'ava'im. He writes, Zeh shemachilu mashkeu, and a child feeds and gives to drink to his parents. Mishal av v'eim, that comes out of pocket from the parents. I don't have to pay for their groceries. They pay for it. I would feed them. I would give them what to drink, but they pay for it. Im yeshel, if they have the money. Im ein la'av, if the parents don't have the money. V'yesh leben, but the children do have the money to pay for it. Then, kofin oso, we force the child. V'zon aviv, he must now support his parents. Kifi mashu yachol, whatever he's able to. V'im ein leben, if the ben does not have the ability to, eino chayv lachaza psachim lahachaz avi, he does not need to go door to door, but if he has the money, we force him to pay whatever he can pay. Sounds like from this halacha, it's not a din in tzedakah. We pay as much money as he has. He needs to pay as much money as he's capable of paying to support his parents. There's no threshold. If he has money, he must support his parents. To halacha and kibud av va'im. But then the Rama writes, Haga, v'yesh omrim, no. The obligation of a child to the parent financially is only tzedakah. Ma'aseh ksafim. You don't have to go above the 10%. If you have more than 10%, you have a lot more money, you're a billionaire, and 10% is very little relative to what you have. So then, still, you don't have to give above the 10%, maybe even 20%. You don't have to give more. To halacha and tzedakah, says the Ramah. But then he writes, Mikol makom, im yadam aseges, if a person does have the wherewithal to support his parents, meaning aside from stuck, he's got a stuck fund of, let's say, $1 million. But he's got $10 million of his own. So now he says, a person dips into his tzedakah fund to support his parents when he did not have to dip into the tzedakah fund. He had plenty of surplus there. So then the Ramah writes, Tavo mi'ira, which is like a curse, l'mish mefarnes avim mimal tzedakah shelo. To view your parents as a nebuch case, giving tzedakah to them, if you don't have the ability and you have to dip into tzedakah, fine. But if you have surplus and you're using tzedakah for your parents, that's not what's supposed to be. You're supposed to use the extra money you have to support your parents, as long as it's not taken away from you and your family. You could still live however you need to live, then you should use the surplus. But the tzedakah should be reserved for those who really know. So that's what comes out halach l'maisa in terms of supporting your parents. But now let me share with you a tshuva Rabbi Kiva Eger. Kiva Eger, sometimes we have a tshuva where they don't tell us what the question is. They tell us the answer. We have to figure out what was the question. So I'll first say the principles of the question, then I'll try to make up a question to make it come to life. The question had to do with the parents, the mother had passed away. And the mother had left a tzava, a certain command for the child. But the father, who's alive, gave an opposite request or demand from the child. So now there's a contradiction of mother versus father, but the additional layer here is the father gave a request or a demand that would be chisar kiss, would cause the child to pay out of pocket. So let me just bring it to life. Just again, nothing. This is obviously not the question, but let's say the mother told the guy, "I want you to." After I die, she said, "I want you to stay in New York." And the father says, I want you to move to Los Angeles. Now, moving to Los Angeles is a chisar kiss. It's going to, the moving costs is going to cost money. So who do you listen to? You listen to the mother, who's now nifter, or do you listen to the father, who's alive? So the Rabbi Kiva goes through the sugya. The Gemara tells us that the parents are married, and they're both alive and married, and they both request water, so you have to listen to the father over the mother. Why? Because the mother also has to honor her husband. She's meshubah to her husband, so the father beats out the mother. Let's say they're divorced, the Gemara says, so there's no longer a shibud. She's no longer obligated to her ex-husband, so now they're both independent, and if they both request water, he could choose. They're equal, because they have no connection to each other. Now what happens, they're married, and she dies. So the Rabbi Kiva says, well, even though she died, so then now there's a separation, there's a period, just like if she were to be divorced, now she's dead, she no longer has an obligation to her husband because she's dead, so now it becomes equal, meaning the child could choose to listen to the father who's alive or listen to the mother who's dead, because they're both now independent and equal. That's what he says. But he says that there's a Beis Yosef that quotes Rishonim that hold, even in that instance, when the mother dies, you still must listen to the father over the dead mother. He says, I don't understand why. He doesn't understand the svara for this. So he says, I don't know why the Beis Yosef says that. But he says, at least the Beis Yosef will agree in this case, that since this instance where the mother's dead and the father's alive, the father didn't ask it's a simple request. He asked a request that's going to be chisar and kiss, that's going to come out of pocket. And we learned in the Gemara that for honoring your parent, you don't have to pay out of pocket. In this instance, he says, you listen to the mother over the father according to all opinions. That's what he comes out by saying.
Because listen to the mother because
the chisar and kiss neutralizes it. Meaning Rabbi Kiva Eger's world, dead mother, live father, they're equal. In the Beis Yosef's world, the father who's alive has greater chiyuv than to the mother. But since in this case the father requested a out-of-pocket cost, that neutralizes it down to this level, in which case he thinks even the Beis Yosef would agree one could listen to the mother. And it comes up, and we'll get to this maybe next week, about saying Kaddish. Let's say the mother says, you should say Kaddish when she dies, and the father says, I don't want you saying Kaddish while I'm still alive. Who do you listen to in that case? The father who's alive or the mother who's dead? So maybe we'll discuss something like that next week. Either way, that's our, first year on the halachas of Kibbud Av V'Eim. Everyone have a wonderful day and a wonderful week.
Rav Moshe Meir Weiss says when you say benching,